All right, so you've sent us a whole mountain of research on large language models and knowledge graphs and search engines. It's time to dive deep, people. Get ready to explore.
Yeah, and what's really cool is that these technologies, they're all kind of coming together and changing how we find and use information.
Yeah, it's like having a research team at your fingertips. But before we get too excited, um, let's make sure we're all on the same page here. So LLMs, those things like ChatGPT, they're like the ultimate storytellers, right? They can write and talk almost like a real person,
Hmm.
but they can also kind of get carried away sometimes, you know? Like that time one LLM told me that there were 0 Turing Award winners from Latin America.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one. It even said it had, like, searched 5 websites or something. But it just goes to show you how these LLMs can just, like, confidently present completely bogus information as if it were fact, especially when it comes to those, like, niche topics,
Yeah.
the stuff that we call long-tail queries, things that aren't really talked about that much online. Yeah, they're really good at recognizing patterns from all the text they learn from, but they don't actually store facts in the same way that, like, a knowledge graph does.
Right. Yeah. Knowledge graphs are more like it's like walking into a massive library where every book is perfectly organized and cross-referenced.
Exactly.
You need a super specific fact. Boom, the KG's got you covered.
Exactly. But KGs can be limited by what's been added to them, right? Unlike the massive amount of information that's out there on the internet, which is where search engines, they still kind of rule.
So we've got our storytellers, we got our librarians, and we got our web explorers. In this deep dive, we're going to see how these 3 LLMs, KGs, and search engines can work together to help you conquer any information challenge, whether it's a simple fact or some seriously complex question. And trust me, there are going to be some big aha moments along the way. Like, for example, I bet you didn't know that when we asked several LLMs about ACM fellows from Latin America, they all made up fake names and even claimed to have, like, searched websites.
Yeah, that's a perfect example of how LLMs can kind of stumble with those less common topics.
Yeah.
So if you need information about something really specific, a KG might be your best bet. But for general knowledge or keeping up with what's happening in the world, search engines are still the gold standard. They're always crawling the web and indexing new content, always looking for the latest news.
Right. But what about KGs? Are they just stuck in the past?
Well, it really depends on how they're maintained. Some are updated continuously, while others might lag behind a bit if they rely on, like, manual updates and curation. Take Wikidata, for example.
Yeah.
It's amazing it relies on a community of volunteers to keep it going, but it just can't match the speed of a search engine that's constantly scanning the web.
So if I need the very latest on breaking news, I'm sticking with search engines. But LLMs are still pretty amazing with how they can generate text, like poems code even. KGs, they can sometimes generate new knowledge through like logical deductions. But search engines, they're more about finding what's already out there. They're the ultimate information retrievers.
Right. They're like those metal detectors you use on the beach.
Okay, so we got our finders and our creators. But what about making sense of it all? Sometimes we need to see the big picture, connect the dots. How do these technologies handle like synthesizing information from multiple sources?
Well, both KGs and LLMs have their own way of tackling that. KGs, they use their structure and all those connections to link together facts and ideas. It's like a giant concept map. You can trace the relationships between all these different pieces of information.
Okay.
And LLMs, on the other hand, they use their pattern recognition skills and their language abilities to kind of piece together narratives and summaries. They're like those really talented journalists. They can weave a compelling story from, like, scattered bits of information.
So if I'm trying to understand a really complex topic, KGs and LLMs are my go-to tools. But how can I be sure I can trust what they're telling me?
That's a great question. Transparency is key, especially these days with so much misinformation out there. With KGs, you can usually trace back the source of each fact. You can see how it's connected to other information. Search engines can show you which websites they got the results from and why they rank those websites a certain way. But LLMs, they're more like magic tricks. You see the amazing outcome, but you have no idea how it happened. Their inner workings are kind of a mystery, which can be a little unnerving if you're dealing with, like, sensitive information.
It's like being served a delicious meal at a restaurant, but having no idea what the ingredients are. You just have to trust the chef. Speaking of trust, what about consistency? If I ask the same question twice, will I get the same answer from these technologies?
Well, with KGs, you generally will. They're based on logic and structure, so the same query should always produce the same result. But search engines can be a bit more fickle. Their ranking algorithms are constantly changing. And LLMs, well, they're the most unpredictable of the bunch. You might get a slightly different answer every time. which can be interesting but also a bit frustrating if you need a definitive answer.
So KGs are the rock of consistency, while search engines and LLMs keep us on our toes. But what if the information I need is missing or out of date?
Yeah.
How easy is it to refine or improve the knowledge base of these technologies?
Well, KGs and search engines, they're relatively easy to update. You can add new facts, correct errors, remove outdated information. It's like having a constantly evolving encyclopedia.
Okay.
But LLMs, they're a different story. Refining their knowledge usually requires retraining the entire model, which is a very time-consuming and resource-intensive process. It's like trying to teach an old dog new tricks.
Yeah, so with LLMs, you're kind of stuck with what you got, at least for a while. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here exploring the strengths and weaknesses of these three technologies, LLMs, KGs, and search engines. It's clear that they're all incredibly powerful in their own way, and they're constantly evolving, but the real magic happens when we start to combine them.
Exactly. By using the unique strengths of each technology, we can create more robust and versatile information systems.
And that's exactly what we'll be exploring in the next part of our deep dive. We'll be looking at the world of synergies, where these technologies come together to create something truly groundbreaking.
Get ready to have your mind blown. We'll be uncovering the possibilities of a future where knowledge is more accessible, more reliable, and more empowering than ever before.
Okay, so we're back and ready to go even deeper into this whole world of LLMs, KGs, and search engines.
In the last part, we looked at the strengths and weaknesses of each technology. And now we're going to kind of shift gears and look at how they can actually be used to meet your specific information needs.
Yeah, because it's not just about having information, right? It's about knowing how to use it. And not all information needs are the same, are they?
No, not at all. We can think of information needs on kind of a spectrum, from simple fact-finding to complex planning or even seeking advice.
Okay, so let's start simple. What about those times when you just need a quick fact? What's the capital of Australia? Or who invented the telephone?
Right. Those are straightforward, factual queries. All three technologies can shine there.
Yeah.
But their effectiveness can vary, depending on the question.
Sure.
For common facts, things everyone knows, search engines are usually the fastest and most reliable option. They have that huge index of websites.
Yeah.
And they prioritize real-time information.
Right.
KGs can also give you accurate answers, but they might not be as up-to-date on things that change quickly, like stock prices.
Makes sense. So for those constantly changing facts, I'm going with search engines. But what about those really specific, obscure questions, the kind of things you might only find in a specialized encyclopedia?
Ah, those long-tail queries. Those can be tricky. Search engines and LLMs might struggle, especially if there's not much information online about it, or if it's buried deep in some corner of the web. LLMs might even just make up an answer. One time an LLM told me that the closest galaxy to the Sunflower Galaxy was called Milky Way's twin.
Wow, really?
Yeah, it just made it up.
So even LLMs can get things wrong, especially with those niche topics.
Yeah, especially if they haven't been trained on enough data about that specific topic. That's where KGs can be really helpful. If you have a KG that's specifically about astronomy, for example, you're much more likely to get an accurate answer about that galaxy question.
So for hyperspecific facts, KGs are the way to go. But what if we need more than just a simple fact? What if we need to understand a complex topic? Or see how different pieces of information fit together?
Right, those are the questions that really challenge these technologies. Now, what's interesting is that both KGs and LLMs have their own ways of approaching these more complex needs.
Okay, so let's say I'm trying to understand, the causes of the American Civil War. How would a KG approach that versus an LLM?
Okay, so a KG would use its structure and relationships to show you all the key players, the events and concepts related to the Civil War. It's like having a giant timeline. You can see how different factors like slavery, states' rights, economic differences all contributed to the conflict. It helps you see how everything is connected.
Okay, so it's like a visual representation of all these historical forces.
Exactly. Now, an LLM, on the other hand, might give you a narrative summary of the key events and their causes. It might even weave together different perspectives to give you a more complete understanding.
So the KG gives me the structure, and the LLM gives me the story.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And depending on how you like to learn and what you're looking for, one approach might be more helpful than the other.
It's like having different tools in your toolbox, each one designed for a different job. But sometimes we need more than just facts and explanations. We need to know what to do, how to solve a problem or what steps to take.
Ah, yes, those planning needs. That's where we move from just understanding information to actually using it to make decisions and take action.
Right, exactly. So let's say I'm planning a trip to Italy. I need to figure out where to go, what to see, how to get around, how much it's all going to cost. That's a lot of information.
It is. And all three of our technologies can help you plan that perfect Italian getaway.
Okay, well, I'm guessing search engines are great for finding all those travel blogs and reviews and booking
Oh,
sites.
absolutely. They're like your personal travel agents. They connect you with tons of information about destinations, hotels, flights, activities, and with their filtering and sorting capabilities, they can help you narrow down your options to find the perfect fit for your budget.
But search engines are more about finding the information than actually making the plan right.
That's true. That's where LLMs and KGs can come in. Like imagine an LLM that acts as your personalized travel planner. You tell it what you're interested in, your budget, your travel dates, and it generates a detailed itinerary for you with flights, hotels, restaurant recommendations, even suggestions for local experiences.
Why, that sounds amazing. So what about KGs? How would they help with trip planning?
Well, KGs can give you all sorts of contextual information that can enrich your travel experience. Imagine a KG that knows the history behind every landmark you visit, or the cultural traditions of the regions you're traveling through. It can even recommend local artisans, hidden gems, off the beaten path adventures.
So it's like having a personal tour guide who can bring the destination to life.
Exactly. And this is just one example. We can apply these same principles to all sorts of planning needs, whether it's organizing a conference, launching a new product, or even just figuring out what to cook for dinner.
It's really amazing to think how these technologies can help us navigate our lives and make better decisions.
And we're really just scratching the surface here. As these technologies evolve and converge, we're going to see even more creative and innovative applications.
I can't wait. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's take a closer look at how these technologies can work together to create those mind-blowing synergies.
Sounds good to me. That's exactly what we'll be doing in the next part of our deep dive. We'll be looking at how search engines, KGs, and LLMs can join forces to unlock new levels of knowledge, understanding, and empowerment.
I'm already on the edge of my seat. See you in part 3. Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into LLMs, KGs, and search engines. Time for some serious synergy talk.
You got it. We've explored the individual strengths and weaknesses, and we've seen how they can be applied to different needs. But now it's time to see how they can work together to become something even greater.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this part. It's like we've been setting the stage for this big collaboration. We got our storytellers, our librarians, and our explorers. And now it's time to see them join forces.
Think of it like this. Each technology has its own tools and expertise. By combining them and working together, they can do things they couldn't do alone.
Okay, so where do we even begin?
Well, a good starting point is to look at how each technology can be enhanced by the others. Like LLMs, for example. We've talked about how they can sometimes make things up,
Yeah.
especially with less common topics. A KG can be like a fact checker. It can provide a foundation of verified information that the LLM can draw on.
So it's like giving the storyteller a reference library to make sure their stories are accurate.
Exactly. And this fact-checking can be done in a few different ways. It can be used during training to help the LLM learn better patterns. Or it can be used in real time to check the LLM's output before it's shown to the user.
So it's not just about correcting mistakes later. It's about building more reliable LLMs from the start.
Exactly. And remember how we said LLMs can struggle to stay up to date?
Yeah.
Well, a search engine can be like a news feed, constantly providing fresh content to the LLM. This is called retrieval augmented generation, or RG for short.
Okay, so it's like giving the LLM access to the latest news so they can stay in the loop.
Right. Now let's see how LLMs can actually enhance search engines.
Okay, I'm listening.
One area is understanding user intent. You know those times when you type a question into a search engine and get a bunch of useless results?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
An LLM can act like an interpreter. It can figure out what you're really asking and translate that into more precise search terms.
So it's like having someone rephrase your question to make sure the search engine understands.
Exactly. And another thing LLMs can do is provide more direct and human-like answers. Instead of just getting a list of links, you could get a summary of the relevant information. You could even have a conversation with the search engine to refine your search.
Okay, now that would be amazing. It's like having a research librarian built right in. So we've seen how LLMs and search engines can work together. What about KGs?
Well, KGs are great at structured information, but they can sometimes feel a bit limited to their own data sets. That's where search engines and LLMs can help.
So it's like they need some fresh air and new perspectives.
Exactly. Search engines can be like research assistants, always looking for new information to add to the KG. And LLMs can take it even further. They can use their text generation abilities to create new knowledge based on the existing data.
So it's not just adding new facts, it's actually expanding the KG's understanding.
Right. And we're seeing a lot of exciting research in this area, using LLMs to help KGs handle negation, identify missing information, and even correct errors.
So it's like having a whole team of editors working behind the scenes. Okay, so we've talked about how each technology can be augmented. But what about going even further? What about true integration where the lines between them start to blur?
That's when things get really interesting. We're talking about ensembles, federations, and even amalgamation.
Okay, those sound pretty intense.
So an ensemble approach means having all three technologies working at the same time, each one doing what it does best. It's like having a team of specialists ready to provide the best possible answer.
So it's like a one-stop shop for all your information needs.
Exactly, and with federation, these technologies can actually talk to each other and collaborate. Like imagine an LLM asking a KG for a specific fact, or a search engine sending a complex query to an LLM for summarization.
So the specialists are working together on a case.
Right, and then there's amalgamation. That's the ultimate level of synergy. It's a true fusion of these technologies into a hybrid system.
So what would that look like?
Imagine a system that has the coverage and real-time updates of a search engine, the structured reasoning of a KG, and the language generation and personalization of an LLM. It could understand your intent access information from anywhere, provide personalized responses, and even learn and adapt to your needs over time.
Wow, that sounds like the ultimate research assistant.
It's still early days, but the possibilities are huge. Imagine a world where everyone has access to that level of knowledge and understanding.
It's pretty mind-blowing. So what does all this mean for our listeners?
I think the main takeaway is this. As these technologies keep getting better, the most important thing is to stay curious. Explore these tools, experiment with them, and think critically about how they can empower you.
That's a great point. This has been a really exciting journey, and I feel like we've only just scratched the surface. We're living in a time of incredible access to information, and it's up to us to use it wisely.
Absolutely. The future of information is in our hands. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.